All right. Welcome to episode 8 of the Extra Innings podcast. And today I got a special guest. I got my guy, Roger, here, who is, you've been coaching. And so this is interesting. You coached at QCC, Queensborough College,
Mhm.
right after I left Queensborough College, but you were also assistant coach my sophomore year. So we've known each other for a very long time.
Yep.
Um, So it's nice because we had a podcast going for a little while together, which actually I just remember that.
Mhm.
And it's nice to have you on the podcast here today. I appreciate you coming on board here.
Yeah, happy to be here, man. Really happy.
Awesome. So cool, man. For the audience that's going to be listening, give us a little background on you, Roger. Tell us a little bit about like where you're from, what your background is, what you do for a living, and then we'll go from there.
All right. Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you. You were the first class, I think, ever. You were the first class ever as me as a coach, which was crazy because how old are you again, if you don't mind?
30, oh shit, 35, I
Okay,
think.
so it's
35?
like a 5-year difference, which was crazy. So I started coaching you really, really young. And it was oh, you were like the third class. So either way, I got started coaching. So I played baseball my whole life, and that was kind of like my escape. So I've had like a very interesting upbringing, really nice parents, but split up and really was never any real structure. So baseball kind of offered that structure, which was pretty cool. And then I stuck with that for a long time. I will say this: I know a little bit about your story. I wasn't as determined as you were to be pro because I gave up way too soon and way too fast. I was a pretty good ball player, had really good accolades all throughout high school and college, just troubled as a human being, trying to find my way and figuring out which crowd to roll with and things of that nature, that basic story. But baseball always kept me on track. And then when time came for me to either stop playing or to start coaching, I decided to start coaching at Queensborough Community College. And that commitment took me away from practicing and playing and kind of going after that career as far as a baseball player. Looking back, being now that I'm 40 and I'd be retired anyway, I mean, I very happy with the route that I took, being that I was able to impact so many other people through the game of baseball. So that's like my big thing is that baseball is a big part of my life and a big part of my development. So I love to have that to give back. I was an All American pitcher in college. I hit pretty well. And then things really started to take off once I started getting into coaching and seeing the impact I could have on people's lives. And that was really the more focus point. I played college, coached college, and now after everything that went down, coaching college over the last couple of years just wasn't an option to go back. New York was very slow in dragging their feet to bring their programs back. And in the world that we live in, it doesn't work that way. And not to mention, not to say too much about the school, but you remember how much baseball we did, dude. We were together 6 days a week. We played 40 games. The school was trying to reduce that to half the time with only one extra season, preseason game. So for my livelihood, it doesn't work. I need to be with these guys and around these guys because a big part of my coaching is developing community and developing a relationship with each other and really moving forward in that direction, as baseball is just the byproduct of everything else that we put together. So that's like a quick idea. So what I've done. And then from there, I've started training businesses. I've dabbled in other businesses, which we could talk about. But baseball has been the mainstay. And now I'm pretty popular on social media, which is cool.
Yeah, you do have a pretty large following. How many followers do you have now
I'm
across
at
all platforms, would you say?
106,000 on TikTok and roughly 46,000 on Instagram, and thankfully still growing. So I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, and it's gonna continue to grow, man. I think the main thing with you, man, and tying back to kind of the year that you coached with me my sophomore year, I think that your focus where you really excel as a coach is on the mental side of the game. And I'll never forget one of the biggest things because and just for complete transparency, you were a fucking pain in my ass sophomore year. And it wasn't for any bad reason. It was because I was not disciplined. And I mean, you could attest to that. I'm sure you remember. I was
Yeah.
a fucking hothead. You know what I mean? And I was undisciplined and I got by purely on talent. And you made me very aware of that, which made me not like you. But the reason why is because it was the truth and the truth hurts. And so I needed to hear that. So it took a while for me to kind of get over that and really start to grow up and realize how right you were. And you weren't the first coach to ever, kind of let me know that portion of it, but it was a huge part of my development as I grew on. And it became a huge part of how I also coach kids when I started coaching travel ball down here in Florida. So I appreciate that, and I think that's a huge part that a lot of kids are missing in the sport, especially now as travel ball kind of consumes baseball as a sport for kids.
Yeah.
Before it was like you have your little leagues, you develop in little league, then maybe when you get to high school you do some travel ball. Now it's like tournament and travel ball. That's it. And that's where it's at. So these kids, if they don't play, there's no discipline. Their parents just lift them up, move them to a whole team where they can play,
Yeah.
and so kids aren't learning roles, they're not learning discipline, they're not working as hard as they should be. And that's where you excel because you take a very straightforward approach to the mental side of the game. So I think that's what resonates with a lot of people when you're training. Because I watch a lot of your content,
Thank
and
you.
it's like it's great because like you give very actionable items and actionable things that people and players can use on each and every clip. You know what I mean? You have some I guess you can call influencers in the sport, like an Eric Sim, right? Where it's purely entertainment based, but
Mhm.
you're on the educational base side of baseball, which there's not very many people who do it. So, what would you say is kind of when you're talking about like the content that you put out? What made you start putting content out on Instagram and TikTok and all that? Like, how do you even get into that?
So that's my favorite part of the story because of the way the way it happened. So I don't know if you remember, I used to put up like my Coach Rogers stuff, and I used to do like inspirational things, and that really didn't go anywhere. And I always did want a social media presence, and then I kind of just gave up on it. And then after 2020 and the world started to change, I had to shift from being a college professor and a college baseball coach to being more of a youth trainer, which I had a sub business. I just made my main business. So with that being said, I started picking up new clients, and I picked up this 10-year-old who's now I think 13 or 14 or whatever he is. And he goes, "Hey Raj," he goes, "there's a lot of people on TikTok that do what you do that are really popular." He's like, "You should try it." So I was like, all right. I was like, let me try and do this whole baseball round of things. And I came up with the name the Baseball Whisperer. And from there, I post 3 videos, and my third video, if you go back, if anybody goes back and sees the third video I ever posted on TikTok, is me doing a swing shortening drill that I probably wouldn't even use anymore. But the way I have it set up, there's an opening in a fence, and it clearly looks like if I hit the ball the wrong way, the ball could hit the pole and bounce back and hit me in the face, which was most of the comments like, "Oh, we were waiting for you to get hit." And it wound up getting like, I don't know, 800,000 views or something crazy. And from there, I had a following of 7,500 people just off the bat. And then based off of the fact that I have a very unique approach. Like even in New York, dude, you were around me. Like there are baseball coaches similar to me, but not many people take the approach that I take or the way that I do it. And because of that, I've been deemed the outside the box baseball coach in New York. And I think that's what's translated to my success on the internet. And then on top of that, being mic'd up and things like that, people like that. Because most people say they're like, "Oh, my favorite videos are when we're observing you do a lesson." Because the way it's set up, it's almost as if they're in the lesson with me. And that's, to your point, why it becomes a little bit different than other people, because I set up my videos almost as if you are the second person in the lesson. Because like even when I give a bat, you'll see I'll flip a bat in this like next video I'm putting up. And I do this a lot. I flip the bat till a hand comes out, but you never see a face. So I'm trying to personalize it to the person that's watching. It's kind of the things that I do. And then I think about my taglines, like what's going to draw people to be like, oh, I used Bregman the other day in my video. That video has over 600,000 views. Yeah, there was a little bit of clickbait in using his name, but the value of the drill was what was more important.
And I think that's fucking amazing because what you're teaching right now, like on just as you're speaking, you're talking about not just like the educational portion of baseball and teaching things, but you're also going into the actual like you're going into the marketing aspect, which I own a marketing agency, so like that's like gold to my ears, right? I don't do the social side as much. I do post content, but not to the extent that you do. But it's interesting because there's a lot of people who are trying to get into creating content, putting it out, and getting viewership. And I think half of the battle is actually having like relevant content, right? Like knowing what you're talking about, which you obviously do. But the other part is like the mentality that goes into how you're creating content and how it's being perceived by the viewer. And so that's interesting because I've I've noticed the way that you put content out, but I've never realized that there was actually intention behind it in the way that you put it out.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, right? It's very thoughtful in the way that you're putting it. So when, for anyone who's like trying to, let's say you have college athletes who are no longer playing baseball, or professional athletes who are no longer playing baseball, and they want to begin putting out content the way you do, and building a following and putting their content out. What are some things that you would recommend that they start doing to build a following? Because not everyone's gonna, like it seems like you just had, gasoline lit to the fire very quickly
Yeah.
and growing your account, and that's not going to be the case for most people. So what are some things that you recommend to someone trying to get into content marketing and putting their product out?
I could definitely help with that. So the biggest thing, number one, is one thing about me, and I even showed you the book before we hopped on. Like I am going to consume as much knowledge as I can, and not only am I going to consume as much knowledge as I can, I'm going to find the people that don't agree with me, and I'm going to consume their knowledge. There are people that don't agree with me, people that have made fun of me. I read their comments, and not because I'm stalking out, because I want to know what the other side has to say. So when there's any kind of, when I make my next video, I now know where some of their knocks are. Like one of the things I did in one of my videos recently, as I said, everybody will agree, because I made a point that doesn't matter if we're talking about a swing this way or a swing that way, everyone's going to agree. And once you start talking about a point like that, now if you don't agree with me, you really want to know what I'm going to say, because there's no way I agree with this guy. So I'm very big on researching every faucet that I could possibly find. I'm very big on everything I talk about. I work on myself. I try myself over and over again. And then from there, the biggest thing, if you want to be successful, is you have to have, you can't try and be like anybody else. You have to literally be yourself, and you have to be engaging, and you have to be energetic, and you have to be lively. So like, I speak with some people that in the baseball community that'll talk to me like, hey, I love what you're doing. How do you do it? And there are certain personalities where I'll tell them like, you're a perfect personality. Like there's this one guy, he's a big dude. He's like me, very moving and very into it. And like, I'm like, people would love you. Like you just have to be yourself. Don't try and teach it to make people learn. Try and teach it how you would teach the kids that I watch you teach. And that will engage them. Versus I've met other personalities, and like, you're going to need to focus on being more energetic. You have to be more engaging. You have to be more finding your own way. So basically, to round it up, is you have to, one, look like you know what you're talking about. I mean, that's a big part of it.
Absolutely.
Then once you look like you better know what you're talking about. Then from there, you better have an approach that's unique to you. Now, even if, say, someone has an approach that's similar to me, it's going to be similar. It's not going to be the same. And as long as that unique approach is to them, unique language, that's going to be a draw. And then from there, like, the little intricates, like I was saying, like where I start thinking about how would the end user receive this? And I guess this is probably one of the bigger points. I watch videos and I see what I like and I see what I don't like. And then from there, I make my decisions. If I was the end user that's going to consume this information, how would I want to receive it? And I think you take all those things, you tie it in together, and you get yourself something. Now, another way to do it is, finding some sort of clickbait or some sort of drill that's going to be a little bit out there. But from there, you better be able to keep producing what you did. That's what a lot of people do, is they'll find like that fad that's happening, and they'll get 100,000 views in a video. But then you watch the other, because I look at this all the time, like, how come this person in baseball that I'm researching right now has a video recently, it went up to 500,000 followers, but they have 500,000 views but 2,500 followers? And the reason is because if you go through the rest of their content, it's not consistent with that message they were trying to provide. And I think that that's the area that has to be the most. And even for me, like, just to give you an idea, you talked about the mental. I give snippets within my teaching of it. I haven't even understood in my own yet how to expand into that, because that's a whole nother version of what I offer. So it doesn't really fit into the Baseball Whisperer. So I try to find ways to work within him as I'm now trying to expand. So I think that's, like, if you want to get started, that's the little area to start focusing on, even though it's very little information. If you understand it, it's a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot. What do you recommend for people who may be running out of ideas or may need new ideas for their topics? So like, if you're someone, let's say it's someone who is focusing on purely doing hitting training videos, right? And developing swings within youth athletes, college, high school, whatever, right? Sometimes people niche down to a specific age range. How do you consistently come out with content for such a very specific topic, and just keep rendering that and cutting up different talking points to continuously put out content, right? And second part to that, how much content would you recommend someone putting out on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis to really grow a following?
So as far as the putting out the videos or the content stuff, I'll tell you, as someone that's been doing this now for 4 years or whatever it's been, almost 4 years, it gets stressful. Like there are days and weeks where I'm like, oh man, I'm like, what am I going to say? But that one thing I've learned that you can't go there. It's just not a good place to go, because that leads to more thoughts of you're not going to have any content to put up, and it's going to lead to more like, oh, maybe I've said everything. And I've been down that road. So if anybody's going down that road, like I've equally been there, and it's not a fun place to be. The biggest way to keep having stuff to talk about is keep doing research, keep looking at things, keep finding analogies, keep finding different ways to explain the same exact thing. And that's actually another part that I do too, is, and that's just more with my personal lessons also, but always looking for a different way to explain the exact same thing. And that engages, and you'll now start finding more people. But the stress of not knowing what to post is the worst place you could put yourself mentally, because that's just going to bring on more thoughts of not knowing what to do. So that's that part. As far as how much do you post, I mean, my last video that I just posted, I think I did over 13,000 views. I forgot hashtags in the main thing. I wound up putting them in a text. If you're trying to hit that fad social media trend where you want to follow this music and follow that hashtag, there's some success in there. The real success, I post once a week, 2 times a week. I post at my leisure. I would probably post more if I had someone editing my videos at this point, but and because that takes a lot of time too, because like you were saying, so like what I do is, so we'll get that. So basically what I do is I take a video, and like you see, my mic is now on my hat. It wasn't working on my lapel, and the mic is really important. Being mic'd up is super, super important. Like if I think I'm going to say something interesting, I hit it right before I talk, and then I talk out my whole point, and then I finish whatever, and I let the kid take a swing or two, and then I turn my mic off, because I could turn the camera on and off from there. People that are just getting started, I would recommend trying to tape a session. You know what I'm saying? Instead of trying to find the stress, like, oh, because like, I've been doing this. Now I know what I want to extend towards my community, because it's the same thing I want to extend to the kids I'm with. But if you're not thinking that way, take a whole video. You might do something or say something in that 60 seconds where you're like, you know what? That's pretty cool. Just post it. And then that's the other thing too. Don't judge your post. I heard something very important, and I'll share this with everybody that wants to hear this, is that there was a guy, I was listening to a podcast about growing your social media, and he's like, when he first started, he would put up these videos and he would get like 100,000 views, 100,000 views, and all of a sudden he had one with like 9,000 views, and he would feel like he failed. But he said, you know what? If only 9,000 people saw that video, but one person took away his message, then the video was worth it. And I think that was one of the biggest things that got me over the hurdle of like, man, I'm posting these videos, 25,000 views, 30,000 views, 100,000 views, and then 2,000. Like, what the hell? And again, that's that it almost hurts you as a person. Like, did I do something wrong? Like, why don't you like this video? I liked it. And then I learned that to that point, if one person received value from it, so now what I look at is I see how many shares and how many saves I got. So if I only have 1,000 views, but I got 50 saves or 50 shares, I'm pretty happy with that, because at least I'm providing value within the people that are watching. And I think that's like, for people that are starting, focus more on people saving your videos than people watching your videos, because most of my watches, like you do this for marketing, what are most of my watches, 6 to 10 seconds or something like that counts as a view. I mean, that's not really a view. They're not getting value. They're watching me from, and like, all right, see you later. Opposed to people that are like, all right, this is it. Like, they're saving or adding me or sharing me. That means that I provided value. And that's the community. Again, that, from marketing standpoints, that's the focus point. Those are the people that you want. At the end of the day, as I'm growing this into a business, I've learned, like right now where I'm at, my capture rate that I need for to grow my business is 1%. Like, that's not even 1%. Realistically, I need 1/3% of my market to believe in me. And that's crazy to like think from such small margins. So when we start to look at growing and getting bigger and needing this capture rate, it's unrealistic, and it's not even important.
So let's touch on your business. Let's talk about what your business is, where you are now, and how you got to that point. Because we haven't really dove too much into what the actual business is yet. Let's talk about your business.
It's so fun. So no, everybody that knows me as the base voice, but doesn't know that I run one of the largest training companies in New York City for baseball. The way it started was, I mean, to give you the quick idea, because it's again another fun story of how my business started. So I was a college baseball coach. That's how we met a long time ago. And from there, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I did know that I always said it like this. As a college baseball coach, I made $7,000. I looked at it as like just a really, really bad addiction that I couldn't kick. I just was addicted to doing it, and I loved doing it, and I loved being part of it. It didn't matter how much money I made, to the point where it affected my life outside of that. So I didn't know what I was going to do. Dabbled with getting a real job, tried to get into sanitation, and then one day, I was a college baseball coach, and I get a phone call from a local friend. He's like, "Hey, my travel team needs some instructors. Do you think you can come down and do it?" Sure, I can come down and do it. $50 for you to come down and do it. So I got $50, $25 an hour. We're talking, I don't know how many years ago. I was 18, so almost, no, it was 20, whatever, 20 years ago almost at this point. Crazy. And so he's like, "Hey, you did an awesome job. Bring down 3 more guys with you next week." He's like, "Charge me whatever you want, pay them whatever you want." So I'm like, "All right, so $50 times 4 people, pay those guys half of that." And now for that same $50, I just walked out of there with $125. I'm like, wait. Like, I just doubled my pay for the same amount of time. Like, there's something here. So from there, I started exploring more with that company and that organization, which actually is no longer around today. And then I just put a random letter on and this ad up on this sports page. And somebody from Brooklyn that ran a little league that needed coaches calls me, and I have a $36,000 account in my hands, and my business just opened. And it was really awesome. And from there, I was like, all right, this is the way that I can start making money. I get to provide jobs. I get to coach baseball all throughout, extend past myself while being able to grow a business and make some money on the side of it. So that was the big area of what happened. And then what happened was I ran that business as a part-time business. I continued being a college baseball coach. Now I had a decent salary that I could live on. And I continued doing that all the way up until 2020, in which case I was getting ready to open up my own facility. My business training business on the side grew so big that I was opening up a 6,000 square foot facility with an indoor gym, an indoor PT training facility and stuff like that. And then my open date was April 1st, 2020. So if you need any more information than that, you must have been sleeping the last couple of years. So once that happened, it put a real damper, $100,000 lost in invested money based off of what happened. Lawyers got involved and was advised like, "Hey, you're not in the wrong, but after you're done with litigation, you're going to lose even more money. So I suggest you shake hands and walk away." And that's kind of where that left me. So now I'm sitting on my couch in 2020 being like, I'm not getting a real job. I've gone too far to get a real job. So I decided I'm going to invest everything into my youth training business. I started reigniting old relationships. And then since then, I am now the head instructor. My company, at least, is the head instructor for Elm Jack Little League, Bayside Little League, HBQVB Little League,
You
Port
got Elm
Washington.
Jack?
I got Elm Jack.
I grew up in Elm Jack from 5 to 16, 15.
You should go check it out. The fields are really nice. They did it. Oh, if you're ever in New York again,
Yeah, I need to go, man. Oh my God, that's crazy. That's awesome. I didn't even know that.
I got that 2 years ago, and then all up and down, all up to Syosset. So, and then from there, we train kids, and then I do, and then lessons. And again, you want like a piece of advice, like if you're an inspiring trainer in anything, but more specifically baseball. When I first started doing this in 2020, a dad. Basically, we're having a conversation about how my life was changing. He goes, "Roger, remember one thing, there's always going to be a kid to train." And that resonated with me so strongly because like, as I started losing clients, I'm like, you know what? Another one's going to come. And now it happens all the time. My phone text messages ring. Do you have availability? And I'm at the point where I almost don't have availability. The only availability I do have is sacrificing family time. And sometimes I even do that because I'm nuts. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, it seems like you've reached that point that all entrepreneurs hit at one point or another where you become unemployable. You're unemployable because it's like you're full blown entrepreneur. You're gonna live and die on the sword of your own dollar, and that's a good place to be. So, wow, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. God, I'm actually really, really impressed that you got Elm Jack and all these other little league fields because that's like it's personal to me because that's where I learned baseball and grew up playing baseball. And I didn't even know they redid the fields, which I'm glad they did because they were absolutely horrible.
Yes.
How much maintenance you put on it, it's just not good fields.
No, I didn't. It was right by that swampland, but I don't know. Something happened with the airport, and they gave him a ton of money, and they redid the fields, and it looks great there. They did a really excellent job.
That's awesome. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you don't have the baseball facility anymore because everything that happened, right? Um, you're running all these. We've got advice, and I apologize. I'm just going through some of the talking points and questions that I have here because we kind of went through some of these questions already. I want to make sure that I'm asking relevant stuff. Um, okay, so back to the mental growth side. I want to know what are 3 books? Because you and I, we had a podcast that was based around reading books and building your business and kind of implementing the two. What are 3 books that you would recommend to anyone who wants to work on their mental growth?
All right. So I got some interesting takes on this, and I'll give you. So I haven't gotten too much into this. Basically, as far as books, before I get into books, I have to give you a little background. So number one, I'm very obviously, philosophical, and also very into older style of teaching, new thought theory, and things of that nature. I'm a big believer that we create our lives based off of our feelings, which leads to certain thoughts, and those thoughts lead to certain actions, and those actions lead to results. And if we don't change the way we feel, we don't change the way we think, we don't change the way we act, we get similar results. So before any of those things go any further, so there's a really small book, and it's by a guy named Neville Goddard. And I will take it with a grain of salt. I'll say you that much, because if you do any research with him online, he's very good. He's very biblical in his approach, the way that he speaks it. And then his later days, he does get a little crazy-ish, I guess you could say it. I don't think he is, but if you listened, you'd understand what I meant. But either way, he has a book called Feeling is the Secret. I don't know if I have it near me. I may. No, it's upstairs. Feeling is the Secret. And it was an awesome book because it really goes over how important it is to feel a certain way before anything else. Because you hear about this stuff like in creation, like, oh, you have to feel it, or you have to think, or you have to, and all this stuff about manifestation. But the biggest missing link is all about the way we feel. So like one of the things you learn about is you hear about people posting little things to remind them about things they want to do or manifest or create. But the only problem is if that little post that you're putting up to remind yourself to say, it's the most generic is like to lose weight or something like that. But every time you look at it, it makes you feel like crap. Well, it's totally counterproductive. When you're wondering why you're not getting results, you're not getting results because you don't feel a certain way. So that'd be my number one book, would be Feeling is a Secret by Neville Goddard. I really, really recommend that one. And then from there, I'm trying to think of what other couple ones. Oh, another really, really, really good book, How to Sell Anything to Anybody by Joe Girard. That was a
Yeah,
really good book. I appreciate it. You read that one? Did you read that one?
Joe, if I'm not mistaken, Joe Girard is considered the world's greatest salesman of all time. He's a car salesman.
Guinness Book of World Record holder.
Yeah.
And so his story was great. And that was a really big pick me up for that book. And a third book, trying to keep this relevant. I don't know. Let me think about that one that I have for you. But those 2 books were excellent starters. Because when you say getting into books, it's for me, one of the things that I was talking about, it comes across the way that I teach. I'm a nut. I have to know how things work. It's not enough oh, do this, this, and this. I get that, but how does it actually work? So I like to break things down and really get to the nitty gritty. So I'm very big on personal development and understanding how to get to those directions. I'm also big on doing it in a certain way because I'm an excitable guy and I have a lot of energy, but I'm also not that cutthroat, going to jump on top of you and knock you out, that David Goggins style, which I appreciate and respect, and it works, but it never worked for me. So you're watching all these guys that are teaching you how to build your business and reading these books, and like Tony Robbins, again, it's great, but it just, there was something missing, and learning more about how to manage myself was the most important thing. So any book that's going to help you manage yourself. And what I mean by that is listen, you built a business. Think about the hurdles that you have to overcome. Think about when you're sitting there figuring out if this is going to be able to do exactly. Am I going to be able to live off this? Am I going to be able to provide off this? When you start having those questions, if you can't put yourself in the right frame of mind, you're not going to see the success you want. So that's where I'm at with those things. Now, I'm reading marketing books and stuff like that, so I'll let you know if I get any other good things.
Yeah, I'll shoot some book recommendations over on the marketing side for you. Actually, I'll do your third book recommendation for you. I'll throw one in there. Mind Gym.
I read it. Excellent book.
Excellent
book. I'm with you. I will take that recommendation in the bank. That's an excellent book.
I want to say it's Dan Hardy, but I can't can't remember off the top of my head, and my eyesight's not good enough to see my bookshelf from here. But yeah, Mind Gym, excellent, excellent book. Um,
I agree. I agree
those
very much.
those are three or a couple great examples that you
Here
gave.
you go. Here you go. I got it right here.
Oh, Castavins.
Matt Castavins. Yeah.
Yes, there it is. I don't know why I was thinking Dan Hardy. I don't remember.
And see, like, you know what? By the way, the foreword in that book is exactly to the point that I'm talking about, and it's not talked about enough. I don't even think it's recognized enough. Like A-Rod,
Yeah,
in this book gives the foreword, and he talks about, he goes, "What do I do for a living? I hit the ball hard. I hit the ball hard. What do I do for a living? I hit the ball hard." That man repeated that to himself every single night. Now, say what you want about him, steroids, not steroids, and me and you know a little bit more about the in-depthness of how unnatural many players were. I'm not saying there were not any that were natural, but to say that some that were saying they're natural, we know were not, and to that degree. But regardless, you take all that away, he was one of the greatest hitters ever to hit. He hit the ball hard. I mean, I hate to call people out, but like Jason Giambi, who was somebody that we knew, or Jeremy Giambi, we knew took steroids. He wasn't nowhere near what his brother was able to do, and it was known that he took steroids. So steroids doesn't make you hit the ball hard, but a mindset does, and that's what that book does. And that's why I was saying, like, that was his mind process. So even on a day he struck out, he went home and told himself he hits the ball hard. Most people strike out and they're going to sit there and be like, I suck, I can't do. And then again, those thoughts or those feelings create more thoughts. Those thoughts create more actions. Now next time you go out in the same situation, you strike out. Vic, me and you were similar in this. Like, we wanted the ball, we wanted to be the guy in that situation, which is why we were successful. It wasn't, and I tell kids this all the time, like when it comes down to playing, and you can even see how my demeanor changed. Like, listen, I was a bad motherfucker just like you. Like, that was my fucking plate. Like, you're gonna step in there and you're gonna have a problem with me. Like, that's like, oh, come on, we're gonna break up his note. No. You could cheer all you want. You're not affecting me. You're actually making me more determined to get your asses out. And then a guy hits a double, I'm not getting scared. I'm even more determined now. And I tell kids all the time, I was telling my 12-year-olds this the other day, like, you're going to meet people like me. And if you're not prepared for me, you're in deep shit. I may have gotten maybe one time in my life, my team has been no hit. I'm telling you right now, I have at least 5 broken up no hitters because I was a pitcher too. And if I'm going into the 4th or 5th inning and my at bats come up, I'm like, if I'm not throwing a no hitter today, there's no fucking way that guy's throwing a no hitter. And I break them up. And I'm telling you, this was so that mindset. And again, that's why baseball is so important, because I got to see how a mindset created a result. And then I realized that I'm not a baseball player. I'm a person that plays baseball. So if I can apply this principle here, I can apply it anywhere. And that's why I'm so big on the mental. That's the same thing I do in my business now. Like, I'm not going to lose. Like, I'm not going to lose. I'm going to be the guy that's going to end up. I don't care how long it takes me, what I have to do. I'm going to be that guy that's going to be out there, and you're going to have to get past me. And not to a point where it's competitive. I encourage you to get past me because it's more fun. Like, just started to ramble, but like my last at bat for my season with my team, my men's team that I played, I hit a 2-run double to get my team. We're down 4. I come up, 2 guys on, 2 outs, 2-run double. It was a 12 pitch at bat. I'm talking like this kid, and this wasn't like, no, it was like a 35-year-old kid throwing like 81, 82 miles an hour still. And it ended with me getting and him turning around and tipping his cap, because it was the most amazing battle. Like, he wanted it, I wanted it, and at that point, whoever earned it, friggin' earned it. Like, it was earned. And like, that's where I would have said, like, I'm happy I was on the receiving end of that, but in the same breath, I would have tipped my cap right back at him if it would have went any other way. So as much as I talk about being competitive, I'm competitive, but the second that game's over, I love you, because that was awesome.
Yeah, I'd say, and it's funny because now that I kind of look in hindsight, who I am as a player is so different than who I am as a person in real life. Like, I'm actually very introverted, and I'm like I'm in the least bit extroverted, right? I like to be kind of in my own little bubble on the side. I don't bother anyone. I don't really talk to many people. Even just doing something like this, like a podcast, like this is out of my comfort zone to just go out and just do this. But like when you were talking about like the mentality of going in, and it's probably going to be hard for people in my network, like in the insurance space, to even like picture me as that kind of person, like, because you've seen me. But like I wanted to give an example, because you were talking about like the mentality that goes into being a pitcher and a competitive ass person. Like, now the word for it is like Mamba mentality. Like, we had that shit way before it was known as Mamba mentality. But example I wanted to give of myself was like freshman year in the CUNY championship game. I threw a complete game, 9 innings, 156 pitches. I was at 105 in the sixth inning, like at the end of the sixth. And uh, Craig goes up to my father in the stands at the end of the sixth inning and he goes, "Hey, Vic's over 100 pitches. We got 3 innings to go. Should I pull him or not?" And he goes, "If I were you, I'd pull him, but good luck trying to get him off the fucking mound because it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen." And that's exactly what happened. He came to me in the seventh and he tried pulling me. And I'm like, "Craig, it's not happening. Get lost." Like, and he was like, "Okay." And I finished it off, 156 pitches. But like when you're in that zone and you're that competitive, you don't want to lose. You know what I mean? And I was always of the mindset that I don't want to leave it to chance to someone else. If I started it, I wanted to finish it. And so it's the same mentality I've taken into business, maybe not to that extent, especially the way that I show my emotions on the mound because I put everything on the mound. But another part of it is like, and now I've started to like think back on like a lot of these things. And at the end of that game, I was interviewed and they asked me, "How do you feel?" And I think I just said like, "I feel good. I feel fine, whatever." He was alluding to how I felt physically. And physically, I could have probably thrown another 50, 60 pitches.
Yeah.
Mentally, I was so drained. The mental portion that goes into pitching a game, right? It's like a chess match every single at bat. And business operates the same exact way. Every single move that you do, every single conversation that you have, every single piece of marketing that you put out, every single move that goes into creating content, there's so much mental energy that goes into it. And if you're not mentally fit to handle that, it's going to be very difficult if you're trying to start a business. And so, I think one of the things I appreciate you, and I keep alluding back to it, is how you focus on the mental side of the game so much. And I think that just there's so many benefits to just working on the mental side of business, life, relationships, sports. I mean, you need to build that part of it up to have success everywhere else.
Yes.
That's like the foundational piece that you need to work on that people don't talk about and they don't do. So awesome, man. Well, I have one more question for you.
Okay.
All right. Actually, I have two more questions for you.
Yeah.
This is going to be a little bit of a silly one, but I think it's going to be an interesting one because I'm curious to see how you respond to it and what your answer is. What is your God, what is it called? Now I'm going blank because I didn't write it down. Shit, Raj, I'm losing it now. I had it on the tip of my tongue. What is your spirit animal?
So the only answer I have that I'm going to go with my sign because I love my sign. So I'm going to say a lion, and because I have that Leo and I have that fight in me, and again, I like that lion because I'm going to sit there and just do my thing. As long as you don't bother me, I'm not going to disturb anybody. And when it's time to hunt, I'm going to hunt. But if you disturb me, you're going to bother me, and that's going to awake the beast. So I would say that's the closest representation of my spirit animal for those reasons.
I love that answer, man. And it's like, I wish more people would ask themselves that question. It sounds so ridiculous. When I do interviews and stuff, I always ask that question and people always laugh, but there's so much behind it because it's causing you to self-reflect on who you are and who you believe you are. And I think a lion is a perfect answer for you. I've had people who we've asked them that in interviews and someone said like a fish or something. I was like, yeah, we're not fucking hiring you for a fucking position. And you think you're a fucking like a puffer fish or something.
I appreciate that.
So awesome. All right. Raj, where can the audience who's watching this and listening to this episode, where can they find you at? How can they contact you? If someone wants to work with you, how can they get in touch with you?
Awesome. Yeah. So Instagram or TikTok at baseball_whisperer. And then my email is thebaseballwhisperer@gmail.com. And then I have more stuff coming to YouTube, but not yet. So just those two areas, the best place to find me and the email. And yeah, definitely love to help out whoever I could.
Awesome. And then the last question, because I keep adding questions on, is there a book coming from Roger?
There is actually, very happy to say that. It's not going to be a traditional book yet. It's going to be more of a baseball training tool that I'm getting prepared to release for kids to kind of buy and have walkthroughs. The writing part has basically being finished. It just needs to be edited. And now I'm in the process of researching how I'm going to get the what do you call it, like the actual pictures and videos, because I don't want us to be like, like cheesy where it's like me in a picture that's clearly like superimposed. I've seen some pretty cool workbooks that people have been putting together, so I'm in the process of doing that. So that's in its works. I mean, the latest release date will be by fall of this year, 2024. I'm hoping to get it out by the summer.
Awesome. Let me know when you have that out. I'll definitely send that out to my audience, and I'm sure we'll support as best we can. So
Appreciate that.
awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you hopping on the podcast, man. It was great talking to you. We'll definitely have to get you back on again. There's never a shortage of wisdom that comes from you. So I appreciate you hopping on the podcast, and I look forward to doing it again soon.
Definitely, Vic. Thank you so much, man.
Not a problem.